Hi guys, welcome back to the Unposted podcast. I'm very excited because today we have a special guest. We have Matt Pilalis.
Hey guys.
Your last name is so fun to say. I'm like, I think you have the coolest last name.
That's so sweet. Flawless Pilalis is usually how I tell people to remember.
Flawless
Because I get a lot of different variations.
Wait,
so it's
I love that.
Yeah.
Matt is a dancer, choreographer, teacher, traveling all over the globe teaching.
Yeah.
Busy, but you're back here for how long?
We love it. I have like a week here and then I'm gone for like 7 weekends in a row.
Oh my gosh, where are you going?
Honestly, nowhere fun. It's like Michigan, Texas,
the Midwest.
Florida. Yeah, like not
boring.
cool places.
Yeah.
And I never really get to experience them because I'm stuck in a studio anyway. So
yeah, and it's always the most random towns. Like I feel like it's like small towns that have like a
Alabama, and it's like it's an hour drive from the airport, and I'm like, where are we going?
Maybe you don't want to go to my my hometown.
I mean, I understand. I literally grew up next to a cornfield. So.
Yeah, it's like a McDonald's, a Wendy's, a Walmart.
Yep, and that's about it.
That's about it. A couple stop signs.
We could party at the Walmart.
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know Matt is, you're from Chicago, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's crazy. So we have like some overlapping throughout our lives, and it's so funny that I finally get to, chat with you like real one-on-one. Because the first time I met Matt was I took his class. And I was, I don't even know, 19, I'm pretty sure. And it was to Dungeon Dragon by Nicki Minaj. And it was like one of the most fire combos. I just remember being like,
we were in it.
No, guys, if you need a choreographer, like Matt is amazing. Better you hit me up, hit him up, we'll get you connected because really, really good, really fun. And yeah, I just really wanted to get you on to kind of chat about your life.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Based on like your little outline you sent me, I send all my guests like a little outline to kind of, get the bullet points. And I'm like, wow, I feel like your life has been like this.
I'm was trying to touch without like elaborating because I'm like, this could go on for 14 more sentences.
Right, exactly. And it's always like finding that middle ground between like, do I elaborate on this and this and this? But, we'll kind of walk through the different points because I feel like life is a roller coaster. And that's what I say on like, I do like solo podcasts too, where I'm like, I feel like I've lived like 10 lives in the last like 8 years. Yep. And it's like nothing ever went like the way that I wanted it to, or like the way that I thought I was going to end up. I was like, I'm going to move to LA and be a dancer and I'm going to work. Yeah. That's what you thought, bitch.
How'd that work for you?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm not dancing anymore. And here we are.
Yeah.
So let's go back. You growing up, when did you get into dance, first of all?
So both my sisters technically started dancing. So I played sports until I was like 12 in middle school. Okay. And then she had a showcase every year. And the company that I grew up on was like predominantly hip hop. So they had like a lot of boys for dance for like that time. It wasn't really like cool. It wasn't like a mainstream thing like it is now. So yeah, my older sister really got me started. I went to her showcase at the end of the year and I watched those boys. I was like, I think I could do that.
You're like, I can be better.
Well, and like we're upstairs, like in the room, like choreographing routines, and we would always like film and have our parents come watch.
Really?
So like
before you even started dance?
Yeah.
So it was kind of like in your blood.
We could do it. Yeah. So I was like, so my sister was like, you should audition. And I was like, all right, fine. So I did. Wow. And I was like 12. I think I was in 7th grade. And not really thinking anything of it because it was like, I could do that, but not necessarily like, this is my passion.
Right.
Only to discover.
Yeah, it was.
But yeah, so I started in 7th grade and it went from like Matt being like Amy's brother to like Matt, or like Amy being Matt's sister, you know what I mean? So I started to take it a lot more seriously and like kind of just had a natural knack for it, and then grew very quickly and very fast, and then it turned into like my love, and now it's my passion and something I'm blessed to be able to do.
Yes. I mean, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Really, truly.
Thank you.
I mean, there's a lot of dancers in LA. Like every time your video pops up on my page, I like watch the thing. I'm like, how does he move? Like, what the heck?
Appreciate
but
that.
How did it's so funny because I grew up with 4 siblings. I'm the oldest, and me and my sisters, both my sisters, we all danced. Yeah. And once my brothers were younger than all 3 of us, my parents or my dad was like, they're not dancing. Yeah, right. Even though like, they had it, they would like dance at home, especially my youngest brother, like definitely like learns TikTok dances, all that stuff. But like my parents were like, well, my dad was like, we're not having another dancer.
We're done with that.
So how was that with your parents? Like being like, I know some parents are weird about like putting their boy in dance.
Yeah.
Growing up, my parents were not my parents. My dad was like kind of weird about it. He's like, no, we already have 3 dancers. Like we don't need another dancer. So were your parents supportive of like, obviously they put you in dance?
I mean, I think with the way that it started, it was predominantly hip hop. So like when my dad would go, it wasn't like boys in tights and ballet and doing leaps and fairy jumps. And like, that's like not where his head was at. He was like, okay, this is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So like, I think the way it started too, I was still playing sports. It was just like, hey, try it and see what happens. Yeah. So I didn't think he even thought that it would be like, this is definite. Like, this is going to be what he does. It was just kind of like, sure, if he wants to go, I'm driving those kids anyways, whatever.
Yeah, of course.
And then it just kind of played out the way that it did. And I slowly started to stop the sports and then take on dance full time and pursue it. So I think they were pretty supportive, but I think the fact that it was like a hip hop genre
that helped.
And there was a lot of boys that were doing it, which
definitely
to
like
a parent, like, you know, takes away the stress of like
so many boys
what that means and the stigma that's attached to a male dancing. It's like, it's cool to do this. So I think that was taken away from in my circumstance. So
right.
I was fortunate in that way.
No, that's awesome. And I remember going to your studio was Extreme, right? Okay, yeah. I remember seeing you guys at nationals, and there was like a lot of dudes, and I was like, because we didn't have one boy, like we didn't have any guys in our studio. So I remember being like, oh my gosh. And like you had like male trainers, like people, you
actually
know,
like all male.
Whereas we didn't have any like at all. So
it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's just so weird. But I know Chicago is like a bigger pool.
Sure, right.
I was from a very small town.
Definitely.
So after high school, what was your path? Just because I'm curious. Like you kept dancing, obviously.
Yeah.
Did you go to college? Did you?
So after high school, like my senior year, we had like a choreographer come in and he would set like a couple sections of our production, and it was like a really intense weekend. And had been doing that for 4 or 5 years at this point. So we established a good connection.
Yeah.
And he had talked to me like, hey, what's your plan? What are you doing? Like, obviously I think you should pursue this. And so I was kind of like, okay. I didn't really know what I wanted to do.
Right.
And he hit me up, and basically my senior year, it was like March, which like most people have their colleges like chosen, and they're like, this is what I'm doing. And I was like, March. I'm like, what do I do? So I was like a little stressed. But he hit me up and he was like, hey, I live in Vegas. If you want to come and live with me, you can be my assistant. We can kind of travel and work together, and I can kind of sign you with my agency. So that would like kind of jumpstart you to be able to go to some auditions and stuff like that. So I naturally, like when you're eager and you're hungry and you're 18 years old and you're like, I don't know what to do, and there's a mentor that you look up to, it was like just a pretty easy decision for me. Yeah. So I did. So I moved to Vegas and I lived with him and taught and choreographed and assisted, and we went to China and did some pretty awesome things for the time that I was there.
Right out of high school pretty much too, which is like super awesome. Whoop. That's awesome though.
I think a lot of people, being the first one in my family to kind of not choose a 4-year university, and like I'm the creative and I'm the one that's actually pursuing something that like I don't have a guideline. There's no role model for me. Like I don't know what this is supposed to look like. I don't know how I'm supposed to think and feel and navigate this decision.
So hard, especially at that age, because you are still like figuring out who you are as a person. Like I look back and I was like jumping into the dance industry. I'm like, wait, like I don't even know. Like I went through a program and they're like, you're more in like the Disney blah blah blah, but then I got off that program and then I was booking like all hip hop and Latin stuff, and I was like, what? And then I dyed my hair black, cut my bangs, went all in with that, and I'm like, what? It's like, so I think I had like a little bit of like an identity crisis, like trying to figure out who I was or who I was supposed to be in the dance world. So I feel like as a young artist after high school, having structure and you live with your parents and blah, 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 to kind of just like being on your own and kind of navigating this new world, I'm sure it's a lot.
It is tricky. And like, I'm very thankful that I had like a mentor that I looked up to that could kind of, guide me and direct me. Definitely. Unfortunately, it turned sour very quickly, and so it was like no longer a good situation for me. And my mom literally called me randomly like the week of, it was like a Tuesday, she's like, I found a flight home for $100 on Thursday, do you want to take it? And I was like, I probably should.
Is this before she knew anything was going on, or she knew? She was
no,
like,
yeah.
Okay.
At some point, there was a phone call that was made, and like she got involved, and then it was just no longer a good situation, and like it started to pan out that like this is not what I agreed to. Like he was going to France, and I'm like, so I'm staying here. Like I thought I was gonna be
because
your assistant. Like I'm confused why you're going to France for a month and a half and I'm staying here. Like, it's just like, that's not really what I came here to do. So it was a learning experience for sure in terms of like, get everything in writing. Like, because it was like, wait, yeah, you can live in my spare room. But then it was like, he wouldn't pay me what I was supposed to be getting paid for these jobs I was helping him for. In turn, I was getting free rent, and I was like, I would rather just pay you.
I'd rather get paid
my money.
And then exactly.
So it was definitely a learning experience very early. And like I said, there was no blueprint for me. I kind of just had to figure it out for myself. So I learned a lot very quickly, which I'm grateful for. But that sent me right back home. And then as soon as I was home, the studio
How long were you in Vegas before you came back home?
Like a year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So
it was good for a short time. And then I was like, for a while. And then I was like, okay, this is not right. So got out of that pretty quickly.
So you went home. What did you ever feel like, okay, maybe I should get out of the situation you were in Vegas and still live in Vegas or go to LA, or was home like what you needed to do?
No. I no. I low key feel like while I respect and admire the fact that my mom was like able to kind of help me get out of that situation, because when you're 18, you're impressionable, and these people that mean a lot to you, you don't want to disappoint them. And it was something that I love to do. And this is the start of my career, quote unquote. So it's like, I don't want to go back right now. Like I'm just getting started,
of course.
Just kind of figuring out what I like. So it was hard, because I do feel like even still to this day, if I have moved to LA right away, I would probably have been there and stayed there and never gone home at all.
Right.
But because I think he was located in Vegas, that was my motivation to even moving. Like it was never, we went the first week, we went to like every show on the Strip. We got like comp tickets, and he's like, just kind of see if this is like is this show something you'd want to do 6 or 7 times a week? And I got there, we went to like every single show, and I got back at the end of like the week, and I was like, I don't think I want to do any of those. Like none of that sounds good to me. Like just not the kind of dancing that I wanted to be doing.
Yeah. And Vegas is a very specific type of dancing. Like
very much.
It's all shows.
And like I could and probably make money, but I know I wouldn't love it.
Yeah.
And I've always been that person that like, if it's not filling my cup,
that is literally me. Like the second I get like my parents are like, you just make like impulsive decisions. I'm like, no, it's because I like feel this way and I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I'm like so quick to move on from things because I'm like, I'm unhappy. Like, why am I here? Like. I'm
sure we'll get into more of that later with my story, because like that is like almost my mantra. Like I live by that. And it's like, I don't think of it as impulsive.
No, I don't either.
I think it's self-awareness.
And like, I think a lot of people are scared of like jumping, and I'm like, I'll figure it the fuck out. Like that's how I am.
Yes.
But we'll get more into that. Okay. So we'll stay on track, and then we'll get on into that. So you didn't want to move home.
Right.
But you had to. You kind of felt like you didn't have an option.
It was a nice reset. And like, I did feel the security of just like having my mom, like kind of get me out of the situation that I knew I probably shouldn't be in, but was eager to kind of stay in because of the reward of like, I'm dancing and I'm over here and I'm doing my thing, and it felt good, but like at the cost, it was really not a good thing for me. Right. So I moved back, and then the studio owner that I grew up dancing for hit me up and was like, hey, what are you doing? You should come work for me. So naturally I did, and I started to like teach, and then it was like good timing because it was like towards the end of that season. So it was like, let's tag you on to the end of here, finish things up, and then next season we can really get you going. Yeah. So I did go back. I went to like community college while I was still there, mostly just to appease my parents. Like I didn't really
just as a fallback
have anything. Yeah. And I'm like
why not?
I think I was told like, just go to school, and like my parents grew up that way, and it's very traditional, and it's like awesome. But I'm like, okay, but I went like, I looked at Butler, and I looked at Columbia and Chicago. I looked at
Butler too.
And it's like, I sat in on some of these classes, and I'm like, one, I feel like I could teach this class better. Two, I'm like, why would I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to get training that I yeah, I mean, it would be great, but like to be that much in debt for something I could be working for right now, I don't agree with.
No, I don't either. I think one of the best decisions I've ever made in my entire life was not to go to school, because like even like George, he's in like debt, of course. He went to school and he's not even using his degree.
And that's the thing. I'm like,
his degree that he has, he probably could have just gotten experience and worked your way up. And that's how it is with like most things, unless you're like trying to be a lawyer or a doctor or something like that. Like, sure, of course, it's going to pay off. But if you're trying to start a business, like just connect, just network. Yeah. You'll learn so much more. Right. And I really think save time too, like just putting yourself out there. But I know that takes a certain type of person to just like be like, I'm going to figure it out, you know? Yeah. But yeah, I agree. Like the best decision for me was like not going to school, because I mean, what would I have used it now?
That's what I'm like. And I mean, even
for dance especially, I was like, no, that's a waste of time.
Yeah. Sorry. Like I can be booking a job right now and I don't need that degree to get that job. No. So like, why would I spend my money? If I was going to go to school, it was like for something unrelated to dance.
Definitely.
And so I was going like, I wanted to be like a PTA, like a physical therapist assistant. Yeah, so I would just like, I know the body, I'm a dancer. Like,
it would fit in with the life. Yeah.
Like I know enough. And I'm actually like interested in learning about that because I am a dancer. So like, let's talk about the muscles and the tendons and everything. And how the body works. Cause that's something that like is closely related enough to dance. So I'm like, okay, I could actually like spend my time studying this and not hate myself.
Yeah.
So I did that while I was teaching, and then I kind of took that on. It got to a point where I was like going to enter the program, and they said you could work part-time for the first semester, and anything after that you like couldn't work. So I was like, so after that like first initial end of the season, it started to like really hit. It was like, hey, do you want to join this program and basically work, you know, like for... I mean, I was like pretty much full time at that point. So it's like, I can't do both of these. And it was that crossroads of like, what do I do?
What do I want to do?
What's making me happy? What do I feel more inclined to? It was dancing. It was teaching. So I was like, unfortunately, like didn't get my associates, and they were like kind of bummed because I think my dad was like a few like credits short of his associates. So she was like, don't be like your father.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Sorry. Like,
you're like, sorry, I gotta follow my heart.
This is my passion. Like, and I'm, you know, my dad didn't have a passion. He chose to work because like of a financial situation. Like he just needed to.
Right.
And I wasn't in that position, fortunately enough. So I'm like, I'm going to do what I want to do. And that's not finishing my degree and getting this. I'm going to work. So, kind of dove into that and taught and did that for like 4 years. And was really happy. And it was like a great experience for me. And I was like around people that obviously like had taught me. And so it just felt like a good fit. And I was like super happy.
And I'm sure like, since, you know, you probably, I mean, you danced with a lot of the people that were like,
I did.
You know, like that were younger. And now I go back to my studio and I'm like, you were literally 3.
Yeah, you're this tall.
I taught you open shut and open shut, like literally in like sitting in. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm sure that was, you said you did that for 4 years.
It was like, 4. I think it was 4 going on 5.
Wow.
And then it turned really, really ugly. We had a very, very nasty divorce. It was like a personal thing to a point where I approached him and I said, hey, let's have a meeting. And I sat down and I said, hey, I am not loving some of these things that I'm hearing. I feel like I'm the face of this company, but I'm supporting this kind of behavior.
Right.
And I said, I would really love to come into my job and have it be black and white. I want it cut and dry. I want to do my job. I want to clock out, and I don't want to really be friends.
Yeah.
And I kind of explained some of the reasonings. Yeah. And like, and again, I had my sources. I felt like everyone trusted me there. So it was like all these things that
because you were the main, probably leading a lot.
I was doing a lot.
Yeah.
I was doing a lot.
Yeah.
And again, was like underpaid, which it was like, hey, I can't pay a 19-year-old the same thing I'm paying a 30-year-old. And I'm like, but you're giving me the responsibilities.
But I'm doing everything to where,
So I'm like, so I don't agree with that. Yeah. And I think was that person that actually spoke up, and everybody else in that circle is like, yes, man. Yes. Oh, absolutely. And I'm like, well, I don't agree with that. Or like even bringing certain teachers in. I'm like, okay, you know, CJ Salvador. Yeah. CJ actually like grew up on Extreme with me for a little bit. He was like a little bit further north, closer to like Wisconsin, but would come down and he did the boy group. So it was like, cool. So like, and we have had him in at that studio, and he taught like 6 times at this point. So it's like, okay, cool. This was right when Trisha's like Anaconda video popped off, right? Like, you know what I'm talking about? Like she's hot right now. We're going to get outside people. Yeah. And I was told that I only wanted to bring in Trisha because I didn't want another good looking male working with the kids. What? And I'm like, wait.
That doesn't even make sense.
What? Yeah. Like, no one would even come up with that rationale unless like that was your thought process yourself.
Yes,
so it was
exactly.
Like, you're crazy.
That
so
doesn't even
everything
make sense.
I said after I told him that I didn't want to be quote unquote friends with him, like I just wanted to do my job and leave.
Yeah.
It became, you're so disrespectful, blah, blah, blah. Like, and I was like, okay, but that's not really the case. Like, and if that's how you're choosing to view it, like.
No, like you still wanted to show up and do your job and be there for the kids and be creative and do everything you're supposed to do. But, you know, after you're done with work, like you should be able to clock out and not have it be your all-consuming life.
And that's the thing, like, because it was such like a close-knit family and like we had that history and that experience and that connection with each other for so many years.
Totally.
It's hard to get out of that.
Yeah.
And then when I chose to separate myself, it was, I think, really hard for him not to take personally.
Yeah.
And that was that gray line of like separating what is business and what is personal. And I think that's when it all went south. So
that's like a big thing, like business and personal life. Like,
and we can get into that. Okay.
It's like
I'm going to jump ahead because I'm talking about this too much and I truly don't think this man deserves this much of my time. But
we'll keep going. Keep moving.
So eventually it was like the 4th going on 5th year and I taught the auditions. It was like, I went to the, excuse me, I went to the parent meetings like, hi, I'm going to be working with your kid. And like, everything was normal.
Yeah.
And then 2 days before the first like rehearsal, he pulled me into his office and he read like a robot off of his iPad. Like, I have no respect for you as a person or teacher, but
like he typed it up.
I literally was just like, okay, well, I know where this is going. And so as he's talking, I'm like taking my key off my lanyard. I'm like, I already know he's firing me right now. Like, and so he proceeds to, and his brother's sitting right there and like is in tears. And he's like, I just didn't know this was going to be happening. Like,
gosh, how traumatic though.
And like, I recognized his situation. I said, here's your key. I stood up and I shook his hand and I said, hey, I think this is the best thing for both of us at this point. We've kind of been riding this wave and I think it's going to come crashing down at some point. So it was like, before it really got to that point, I think it's best if I step away.
Definitely.
And he was like, great, absolutely. I'm going to pay you severance. Like, we're going to make this, this is like, you know, amicable. It's not like the biggest deal in the world.
Right.
And whatever, stood up, shook their hands. Great.
Yeah.
So I was like, great, this is awesome. I got fired, but like, I'm actually okay with it.
Yeah.
And his brother texted me after.
I mean,
like,
it's probably exhausting. It's probably like, come on.
I knew it was coming. Yeah. So it was like, let's just face the inevitable.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so his brother was like, you know, I think I can make this work. Like, and I was like, Jay, honestly, like, I think this is for the best. Yeah. Like, which is why I agreed to turn my key in and step away.
And it's
like,
time
it's okay
for you to go off and, you know.
So naturally, the kids show up 2 days later and they're like, where's Matt?
Yeah.
And so then he proceeds to tell everybody that I quit. And I'm like, okay, well, that's not what happened.
Yeah.
So then all of these parents, all of these kids are like texting me. It like blew up. And my birthday was 2 days later. So I'm like on vacation on my birthday trying to have a good time. And I'm like bombarded. I'm just like, I can't even think right now.
Yeah.
So then it was basically a large demand of kids and families that were like, I don't want to go back there if you're there, if you're not there. And so I'm like,
if you were running a lot of, you know,
I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, of course.
And of course, he didn't want that to come back on him. So that's why he told everybody that I quit. It was me. And it was like, no, that was your decision.
Right.
I just don't think it would have had the domino effect that it did. And he wasn't prepared for that.
Yeah.
And also the timing of when he did it in that season, I didn't think he would think I would be able to turn it around so quickly.
Yeah.
However, literally like 10 days later, I opened my LLC and I was up and running and had my...
In 10 days?
Yeah.
You were like, no, I'm opening mine.
And that's what I did.
Yeah.
And
did you have, before you left or got fired or that situation, did you ever think in your mind, I should just open my own studio? Or was that like after you're like, you know what, I'm just going to open mine? Honestly,
I was teaching at like other studios at that time. So I didn't think this was like the end all be all for me. Oh, I got fired. I'm screwed. It was like, I'm cool. I'm sure I'll figure it out. I was still choreographing and traveling. So it's not like I had to be in one spot. I can still make my money.
Right.
It was when those kids and those families that like, you know, I had not only grown up dancing with, like I've seen them since they were here.
Yeah.
And then I've taught them for 4 or 5 years now. So there is that like almost responsibility to those kids. And knowing they didn't want to be there if I wasn't there, I did feel that obligation to kind of give them a home.
Yeah.
And my aunt owns a dance studio. So like, I
so
know
you knew the
how
ins
this
and outs
works.
kind of, yes.
She literally called me the day that I posted like on social media. I was like, hey, I'm doing this thing. She calls, is this real? And I was like Mary, I know, trust me. Like this is not really what it was never a dream. It was never a goal. It fell into my lap, and the way that it happened, like I'm so grateful that there was enough response and abundance of kids and families that were like, we're with you.
So people switched.
And so I had like 40 families come over. And, and then I also had like 4 of those employees quit and come to me. So it was very telling. Like, it was like, I didn't need to post about it. I didn't need to.
You didn't need to do anything.
You lost all of those families. 4 other of those people that worked for you didn't want to work for you. Mm-hmm. I think that speaks volumes in itself. So I didn't have to go on and I didn't quit. I never posted anything like that. It was never the only thing I will say I did.
You're like, wait.
Okay. Some call it petty. I call it creative.
Yeah. Nice.
It was like the one answer that I had.
Yes.
It was like Taylor Swift's Look What You Made Me Do came on.
Look what you made.
And I'm scrambling. Like, I'm like, I don't have a studio space.
Right.
They just moved out like that. I think this was in September. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And they moved out that January before. So the old space was still vacant. So it was like, no one's there. There's mirrors, there's floors, there's rooms.
Amazing.
I have some cosmetic changes, some bars, some paint, and some speakers, and I'm good. So I inquired, and it was 10,000 square feet of retail, which no, I have like 40 kids. I don't need 10,000 square feet. And so I just inquired, and basically the landlord emailed me back and was like, I hate that man so much. I'm willing to help you out. He gave me 10,000 square feet for $3,000 a month, which is like unheard of in that location for that like retail space, which is like $18 to $20 a square foot, which do the math. It was way cheaper than what I was supposed to be paying. And he was like, if that man screwed you over, I'm happy to help you out. And I was like, okay, well, this is a blessing because I'm literally like, why not? So I went in there, had a short-term lease, and literally turned it around super quick and was able to like have my studio up and running. We had the first rehearsal like October 1st. So I'm like, I got fired in less than 3 weeks, opened a business, found a studio, and got those kids in rehearsal. That's crazy.
So I have a question.
Hit me.
That I think for like viewers and people that are listening to this story being like, because I know a lot of people maybe leave a situation or a relationship or a job and it's like traumatic or like, you know, you were there for a long time. Yeah. So to pick yourself back up and just continue forward so quickly and be able to like turn it around in like 3 weeks is insane. So how did you, I guess, mentally get through that and be able to be like, fuck it, I'm just doing my own thing? Because I think that takes a very special person and just attitude to be able to kind of just trudge through.
I like wish I had a better answer. I think first of all, that time was like I blacked out. Like I'm like I look back at that like that's 3 weeks and I'm like, what the fuck just happened? Yeah, that was crazy. I think it was the amount of support that I had, which was validating to me to be like, hey, we're with you on this. Right. So like as scared as I was to make any single step in opening a business or a studio, like, and that like stress and anxiety that comes with that was kind of relieved by this amount of support and people that were like, hey, listen, I'm with you. And I had so many parents. I got speakers for free. This mom knew some guy that like had a like resale shop that had some speakers, donated the speakers to me. Like, so people were really like, I had a lot of very good people in my corner and like, I cannot deny the fact that they definitely helped me out. One of the parents' dads was like a painter, came in and like helped paint the studio, got me some supplies. Like, I mean, it was just like really like, wow, when you really come together for the right reasons, it's amazing what can happen. So it's like good people, good vibes, good energy, good like motives. This is like what we're trying to do. And I think it was like the abundance of community that I felt from those people that were like, hey, we're with you. That like were able to get me through and keep me sane. And like one of those people that left that was a teacher that also like kind of helped me creatively was one of my best friends for like 13 years. So it's like which again, this is kind of not the fairy tale ending. But I was like excited, you know, like to start a business and then have, you know, so many people, one of which is like literally your best friend, kind of join on. It's like, it's exciting while it's scary and nerve wracking and like, oh shit, is this really happening? Like, you're kind of willing to do it when it's with the right people. So I was like excited to start. So we did great, and we, you know, made it through the first couple of years,
right?
Which, I mean, a lot of businesses don't. And so it was like the fact that we were like legitimately making money after like the second year was kind of like, oh, so we're doing something right.
Right.
Which at that point in time, like, I had also just bought like a townhome, and I have a dog. And so I was like, okay, well, I need to make some money here. Cause like I need to support myself. Like I have a mortgage. Like this is a lot.
Crazy.
But it did work out. And then year 2 with my business partner, it started to take a turn. So I had given her just like basically gifted. She didn't take a paycheck for the first couple of months as like her investment, but every bill, every lease, every dollar amount that came out for that business was in my name. Excuse me. So it was set up 99% me.
Right.
And so after year 2, we started to make some money. She's like, hey, I want 50%. And I'm like, hey, I want $1 million. like, you know, like it's not really how that works.
No.
It's like business 101. You take the risk, you're entitled to the reward. Well, you weren't in a position to invest or take the risk, so you let me do it. And now after you find out a couple of years that we're staying afloat, we're making money, this is going to be successful. Now you want to put the eggs in the basket? I'm like, well, unfortunately, that's not it. And so that is what initially started a tiff. And I'm like, hey, I'm doing all of the accounting work. I'm doing the books. I'm, you know, filing these articles of organization, and I'm the agent, and I'm the manager.
There's a lot of back end that like, I mean, to run a business, it's not just like, oh, I can get a dance all day and teach class.
And like the office side and the software and the inputting,
communicating with the parents and the kids. And I mean, it's just, the back end is like the job.
And so obviously I had people to help and stuff like that. But I mean, you know, when I was being front desk and the manager and the teacher all at once, it's a lot. And I didn't take a salary for, you know, the first year for that job on purpose, just so that I didn't have to look back at the bank account and stress out. And like, so I really put my eggs in this basket, and then it started to turn. And unfortunately, that's where the friendship kind of started to dissipate, and then it got ugly. And I found out that she had stole like a substantial amount of money from the account, because I would travel, right? So on these weekends, I had her assign her on the account. So if my ballet teacher needed a check, she could sign and write the check. So I wouldn't have to like pre-organize everything. It was just like, hey,
and that's what you do. Like if she was helping run the thing, it's like,
take some responsibility. You have 15%.
That's normal.
Here. Like,
Yeah.
And again, my best friend. So you didn't think anything of it.
Right. Of course.
But then like, because basically I wouldn't give her what she wanted, she's like, okay, well, I'm not working for you next year. And I'm like, okay, like, I think we can talk more about this. Like, let's try to find a happy medium. Like, let's work this out. And then it just became, you're so greedy. I have no idea who you are. Like, I like can't believe you. And I'm like, I think you just can't separate business from the personal aspect. And I think because I gave you this percentage, you're thinking I could just give you more so that I can make you more money.
It doesn't, and that's why, like, starting a business with family, friends. I mean, we have ours, and we definitely like, you know, like,
it's not,
I love him, and and we have to like find the time to separate the two, because it's not, business is like not personal. It's not like, oh, I hate you, George. So I'm, you know what I mean? Or, and then you take it in, it's hard not to take it into that personal space. It's like almost near impossible.
And that's why I was like upset, because I'm like, hey, I'm not willing to throw away this 13-year friendship over a business disagreement. Like, to me, it's not worth it. I care more about our genuine, you know, authentic friendship that we've had. Good friends are hard to find. Like,
they are. Oh my gosh. Like, I've been out in LA for 9 years now, and like, I have like 2 friends. I'm just
small
like,
circle,
like very small.
Quality over quantity, for sure.
Like, I have my small group of people. Like, my birthday's next month. He's like, who should we invite?
Wait, when's your birthday?
9/11.
Oh, shut up. Mine's the 9th.
Oh, wait.
Cute.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, happy early birthday. Yeah, for sure. I knew I liked you.
But yeah, he's like, well, who should I invite? I'm like, let me think. When I have to think, I'm like, my sister.
I'm like going through my texts, like, who do I talk to?
Yeah, it's like going through social media. I've seen them like, recently. But yeah, definitely, it's hard to find good friends.
Yeah. And so I just was like upset because while I didn't agree on just giving that percentage of the company away and we disagreed, it was like, at the end of the day, you're like my person. Like I remember she was like about to go into surgery, and like the night before we stayed up, it was like 3 a.m. and she's like, "Are you up?" And I'm like, "Yes." She's like, "I'm just so anxious. Like I can't sleep." And we like got into this deep convo and was like, "I can't like picture my life without you." And then I'm like, here we are like a month later, and it's like, that's
so you're unfortunate.
Literally like I'm the enemy. And it's like, so that was a hard pill to swallow, because then it got nasty and we got lawyers involved, and I ended up not suing her, which like everyone and their moms was like, sue her. Like, and I was like, you know what do I want out of this? Like, I want my company back. I want her gone. I want to be done. I don't want to ruin her. I don't want to expose her. That doesn't bring me any joy.
Because like you did have, were for a long time. So it's like, you don't want to like ruin their life.
Again, that's not my intention here.
You just wanted to have your business.
This is, again, and that's the thing. It was just like, this is my business. This is what I want. So it was like, at the end of the day, I don't need that validation, because like my lawyer looked at me and he was like, if you took her to court, you'd win. He's like, but you're going to spend 20 grand to get your X amount of grand back. And he's like, it's really just not worth the time and energy. And that's where I was at. Like, after dealing with all the shit that I dealt with to get to that point, it was like, I don't have the energy to sit here. What do I want? Let's focus on that and do it in the quickest, easiest way possible. And that's what I did.
Yeah. And well, good for you for I think you took the higher route. Obviously, if she wasn't your best friend, like things might have looked a little different. Like what the fuck? Who are you? Like trying to like opportunist over here, but like that you took the high road, and I think is something that is admirable. And you just wanted what you wanted. You weren't greedy about it. You know, you started your business, and you know, I don't think. I mean, what else are you supposed to do? You know, it's like, what else were you supposed to do?
And I did what I did, and then I kept going, and I had that for like another 2 years.
So she's out of the picture now. Still.
Yeah. Like, which is sad. And like, I think she got married recently, and it was just like, like I didn't expect to be invited. I mean, we haven't like really, she's like FaceTimed me like a few times over the years. And I was like, wait, what? And I picked it up, and it was like normal. Like when I moved, and they were like, oh, I heard you're moving. And I'm like, so I'm not the devil now.
Yeah, like exactly.
Had some time to reflect, and we're like, maybe not the most proud of their choices. And so I'm like, okay, so I'll entertain it. I'm never like, I'm never that person. Like if we have a falling out, I'm never going to be like, ugh, you're a bitch, and not say hi.
You're always open.
Like, what's up? Yeah. Like, I'm going to be civil about it.
Yeah, of course.
But like in my head, I'm like, this is crazy that you guys are like trying to be supportive about me moving. And then I had my brother-in-law pass away, and like she reached out and was like, hey, like I'm sorry. And it was a very like quick short text, but it was nice for her to even send. But it was like, okay, well that was nice. But like, I saw she just got married. I didn't see. Blocked and everything. But a friend told me she just got married, and it was like, that was something obviously we talked about. So it was like, maybe in a past life, like I would be sad that like that wasn't a part of my journey with her. But like, you know,
I feel like it's hard because like, you know, I've grown past, I mean, I was married and divorced. I don't know if you know that. Fun fact.
I didn't know that.
But like, you know, I look back at just like different phases of life that like of people I've been really close with that, you know, have hurt me or I've hurt them, or, you know, vice versa. Just, I look back, I'm like, oh, damn. But then I'm like, no, that's just part of the journey and the growth. And like I truly believe like people are meant for your life in seasons, like,
and you're thankful for the time and the experiences that you get, and
absolutely.
If they choose to make it to the end, great, and if not, like choose to acknowledge it for what it is and be happy that you got some cool time and cool memories together. But like I don't think I harp on it. Like I don't harbor resentment towards her.
No,
like,
you don't think about it daily. Every now and then maybe you'll be like, but then
but
you
like,
move on.
It's not
life
the end
keeps
of the world.
going.
Correct.
So so you continued your the studio for how much longer?
It's like 2 more years, and then COVID hit.
And
honestly,
COVID,
like
everything just
and honestly, like while I did it because I felt a responsibility, the biggest chunk of like those kids that I had that like I really felt a responsibility to had graduated the year before. So then like this next year, it was like COVID started to hit, and I'm like, okay, well now I don't have my best friend in here. Now these kids that I like really truly care, that also like gave me everything. You know, and we're so thankful and grateful that I gave them a space, you know, are gone. So it was like, what am I doing this for? And so it was kind of a really necessary time of reflection. And like I said, I was that kind of person that was like, okay, yeah, I'm making good money. I could do this. And like, obviously I can prove that we can be successful. Like we did well, we competed, we won. And that's obviously like free advertisement. So like, that's how I've booked and networked and, you know, made a lot of connections with other studios.
And I can imagine you're a networking human. Like
you
probably just go around and attract.
I feel like I can talk to anyone, you know? Yeah. Like we'll get along.
People are like, who's that?
Yeah.
He's got a vibe and aura, good energy aura around him.
So then I just like kind of reflect. All my classes were online. I went down to Florida to like help my parents with their business and just was like, by the end of the trip, I was like, hey, I called my studios and my parents and I was like, hey guys, like, I mean, in tears, it's sad. Like,
of course,
but I knew I was unhappy and I felt like there was more. Like I felt like I was the most motivated person in the room. And I know that is not a good place to be in and I'm not comfortable. Like I want to feel like I'm
fulfilled,
the dumbest person in the room. You know, like
you're always looking for growth. And I definitely relate to that. Cause like I've been in situations where I've had to quit, like, you know, pull out of things that like I knew I was going to like hurt other people doing. But at the end of the day, I'm like
you got to do what's best for you.
What's best. And like I relate to those conversations. I was in a girl group, you know, we were like getting ready to release this whole album or this song and everything. We were like being looked at by labels, different stuff like that. And then right before I was like, I can't
It's just
do
not
this.
my path.
And I remember that phone call just like
sucks.
So
because you know you're disappointing people that you care about.
Yes, exactly. And I'm like, this is probably gonna ruin relationships, and it did for a little bit. But you know, me and the girls are like friends now, thank God. But like for a little bit, you definitely feel that like I just you know really hurt these people, and I don't know if they're gonna forgive me. But you gotta put yourself first.
And I had a couple of seniors that I did feel like so guilty about, and like calling their parents was like my biggest nightmare. I'm like, this is their last year, and now I'm like basically closing my doors and saying go find somewhere else for your last year, which like I was them once. I know how much that sucks. So like delivering that news was just as hard, you know, to give them as it was. It's
almost harder to, I feel like it's harder to like give.
At the end of the day, I weighed the cost and I knew this was not.
It wasn't
good for me anymore. Like it was, again, great. I'm grateful for the time and you know, the space and the connections that I made through it. But like,
so when was the point of like, okay, I'm starting to get this feeling through COVID, or I'm reflecting and maybe I want something different, or I want to go in a different direction? How long from the point of that feeling to pulling the trigger?
I think honestly it had been brewing for a while.
Yeah.
So like after the whole quote unquote divorce with my business partner, I did it for a year by myself. And like, again, I really was used to doing everything myself anyway. So it wasn't like a huge thing, but it was a thought. And then the seed was planted and kind of started to grow. And then I'm like, okay. And then it just like was a domino effect of things. And then COVID hit and it was like, everything's online. And I'm like, wow, you just have so much time to sit and reflect on like what your life is and your choices and like where you see yourself and your goals. And I'm like, I just feel like have so much potential that's not being met at this point in my life. Yeah. And that's when I was like, okay, I think this is like my sign from the universe, like this pandemic. And I'm sure a lot of people have that story, but it's like, and again, it's scary. It's sad. You just opened a business 3 or 4 years ago. You don't want to like, you know, there's some pride in that kind of bruises your ego and you're like, oh shit, now I'm closing. Like, what are these people that, you know,
did you care? I know like for a lot of people, it's like, you just wanted something new, but I know a lot of outside people probably like, oh, well, he just didn't have enough
the
students.
Haters are gonna hate.
The haters are going to hate. So like, how do you tune that out for, you know, because that's something I think that drives a lot of people's decisions these days, especially with like social media and having to be perceived a certain way. Yeah. And how do you know, not care? Like, like, I don't care what these people are going to, because I know that's a big thing like right now in the world is just like everybody just, I'm like, please yourself, like make yourself happy.
Well, we're human. I mean, right? Like naturally there is like, and my mind is like in a million different places thinking in every different scenario. And I'm like, oh God, what are they going to think? But like at the end of the day, like who gives a shit what they think? Like if this is what I want to do, they're going to talk. And I'm sure, you know, those people that I left are having a victory laugh and they're clapping it up and they're like, I knew this would happen. Cool. He's down. And I'm like, you know what? Have your laugh, clap it up because I'm clapping it up and I'm laughing because I'm doing something else that makes me happy. And I even like moving back from Vegas, it was like, while there can be like, you know, some disappointment in that, I think I've always just tried to focus on what the future has and what I want and what I'm getting out of it. And I've never really been the person to kind of give a shit about what other people think. I mean, again, naturally I'm human. So like the thought crosses my mind, but it's not going to overweigh the decision for me to choose me.
Right.
And that's what I like. I love that about myself. Yeah. Like, I'm like, great. I'm so proud that I was able to move back from Vegas and keep my chin high and close my business and move to LA and, you know, move across the country with friends or family and closing a business and starting over really when I've been in this choreographer teacher position for so long is a big jump. So it's like, it's scary, but I think I trust myself enough to be like, hey, I know whatever I choose to do, I'm going to, you know, put my head down and work my ass off.
Yeah.
And I think I believe in my work ethic enough to know that it's going to be successful no matter what I do.
Definitely.
And I think it's that like confidence in myself because I've always had to depend on myself and you know, I've made it through so far and I've made my decisions that are risky and can feel very scary at times. But like, if you trust yourself and you know,
you don't regret it.
But no, I just really, I don't have any regrets. And like, even hearing you say like, like I was doing this and I moved to LA and like, I'm so grateful that I moved to LA when I was 28 because like, again, when you're 18, you're so impressionable.
Wow, 28.
And like, like
good for you.
I mean, and like, think about it.
I turn 28 next month and I'll get in my head like, I'm running out of time. I can never be a dancer. I can never go back to dance. Like if I wanted to go back to dance, I would do it for fun.
Yeah.
You know, not that I don't dance. I dance, just not actively pursuing. Yeah. But, you know, as me being in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm almost 28. Like I don't have time to still pursue this industry. So that's amazing in itself that at 28, because most people by that age think they're at ending and they're not at all. No. Like what?
I also think the narrative's changed now. Like it's like, also the industry is just so different from what it was. So it's like, I am grateful that I moved when I did. And like, maybe I missed out on that time when like I'm doing tricks and flips and all this stuff. And like, I probably could have booked that audition if I had done the backflip. And like, I'm actually at peace with the fact that I'm not going to be that person in the room. And like, what's meant for me is meant for me. So I'm like not putting too much stress on it because I also am fortunate enough to be able to do other things to have income. So I'm not so...
I have to book this job.
You know, and like I really wonder for like some of my friends. I'm like, if I didn't teach and choreograph, like what would my life look like? Because I would be so stressed because it is tough and it's different. And you know, COVID, there aren't really as many auditions after. It's still kind of working its way back to normal.
It's rarely in person still to these days.
It's like direct book. And if I've worked with you in the past, awesome, because I trust you and know you.
Or if you take my class, that's it.
Why would I take the risk on somebody new when I can have the convenience of not renting out a studio to have an audition, not pay, you know, it's just like time and money.
And I like you. I like how you work, even if you're not the best dancer in the world. Like I like working with you. So therefore I'm going to book you because you're my friend. Like that's how the industry is now. But that's crazy how, you know, but I think that life experience that you had leading up to moving at 28 prepared you so much 100%. More than being out here, to be honest. Like just the mental game of like the mental toughness that dance, you know, kind of this industry is like, you got to have like,
you have some thick skin.
Yeah. You got to like be like, fuck it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that experience, I feel like you've always probably had that in you, but like going through like basically like a business divorce and then, you know, having to not let down, but you know, go through the process of leaving your studio to then, so you're like, hey, I'm just gonna move to LA. Yeah. Is that what basically happened? I mean,
next? I just felt like, it was like, I don't feel like I'm done as a performer. Like I still do love to dance. Yep. And I've kind of prioritized this teacher choreographer position just because it was kind of fell into my lap that way. Yeah. And so when I was reflecting in COVID, it was like, hey, I do still love to dance. And while I feel like my body is able, I think that's where I need to be for the kind of work that I want to do. And even coming from Vegas, I still kind of had that little voice in the back of my head. Like, what would it have been like? Like, would I have thrived in LA?
I still feel that. Like, Cause I'm like, did I try harder? Like, there still is that little voice that's like, maybe you should try to dance a little bit more. Yeah. You know? So now I'm like, I'm going to try to take one class a week. Yeah. Because there was a time like I went through some really shitty jobs and I was like, I'm never dancing again. Like, fuck we do these that like people. Weekly. Yeah. Yeah. I'm like, I'm never dancing. I hate dance. Yeah. Like, you know, but that now after taking many years off of like the dance industry, I'm finally like, now that I'm more mature and like not so like hungry to like book every job, you know, you kind of, after being in production, I'm like, oh wow, like they're not booking me because I'm not a good dancer. They're not booking me because they don't need a redhead or like they don't need a 5'3" girl. Like she doesn't have a bookend. Like those things. Like I was like, when I was 20 years old auditioning out here, I took everything so personally that it like just ripped me apart. Whereas like now I can go into an audition and be like, what's meant for me, if I'm meant to book this job, it's already in my path. Like it's already carved out for me. Like
there's that extra sense of peace.
Yes. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do my best. And then I don't like get up there and forget the choreo, like crazy stuff, like freak out. That
pressure on yourself.
Yeah, and then I leave and it's my whole life. I'm like, now if I don't get a job, I like not thinking about it the next day.
Okay, let's go grab a coffee.
It's like I'll leave an audition and be like, yeah, I got to the end, it felt really good, and then I'll forget about it, and then I'll get a call. They're like, oh, they want you to, and I'm like, I forgot about that job.
Yeah, right? Yeah,
I didn't even care about that. Yeah. Cool. Like, but yeah, that's how the industry is. So I'm sure with that experience, just of growing, you probably grew exponentially faster than most people,
which I'm so thankful for.
And how long have you been in LA?
It's 3.5 years now.
Wow.
So I mean, still kind of getting my feet wet.
Yeah.
I mean, 3.5 years, you're like, could be short, could be really long, depending on what you're going through.
It depends. But like, I mean, you've been in the industry as far as dance for like a long time. So I'm sure, you know, it's new still probably to you, but like, I mean, you've been in this world for a long time. I have friends
too, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Like, so it makes it easier when you have like people that you know that can connect you with other people and just kind of jumpstarts you a little bit faster.
Right. One thing I wanted to jump to before we kind of come back to wrap it up with what you're doing now and everything is I want to talk about when you came out to your parents.
Oh God. Okay.
That experience, just because I feel like I haven't had somebody talk about that on my podcast yet. And I really think it's going to be a good thing to kind of touch on.
Yeah, for sure. I'd love to. Okay. Well, I'm going to try to give you the Cliff Notes.
Yes. Like, give me the Cliff Notes. Yes.
So, okay. My parents moved down to Florida when I was 22, I think. And that was like when I got my townhome. That was like right when I opened the business. Yeah. It was like I was kind of on my own at that time for the first time really ever. Yeah. Because like dance and work had just consumed me. So like dating, really didn't think about it too much.
Right.
And I grew up very religious. Like church every Sunday. Me too. Like that was not really like...
Were you Greek?
Yeah, I mean, right? Yeah. Like, his parents we just like were very traditional in that sense. Yep. And that's like very Midwestern and very suburban and very much the environment that I was a product of growing up. And so like entertaining the idea of being attracted to men wasn't something that like I wanted for myself. Right. So like, despite maybe me having thoughts and feelings of like being attracted to men, it was like always suppressed, like because
pushed down, because that's not how you can't be this way. Yeah.
And so while like I feel like I still am spiritual to this day, I don't really believe in organized like religion in that way. I believe in more like a personal relationship. Yeah, definitely. And so I started to talk to God about like for the first time, like what these feelings are. And like, if this is really who I am and you're okay with it, let me know, give me a sign. If not, just get rid of this and like
get rid of this feeling.
Like let me find some peace with like who I am. Yeah. And so, it was like, the first year that I really had been like living on my own and kind of starting to like process these feelings that I hadn't really acknowledged before. And it was like Christmas and we were going to go down, like all my siblings and I were going to go down because it was like the first or second year that they had moved to Florida. Yeah. And I remember it was my sister, my brother-in-law, my parents and I, and we were just having a conversation at night, like in the living room. And it was like, I think it was a political year. So like we were just kind of going back and forth. And my mom had a stillbirth. She had 2 miscarriages after that. So like I think, and my dad are single issue voters pretty much because of abortion. Yeah. And while they have that personal attachment and I have not had a stillborn and don't know what that's like, I can acknowledge that that's your personal experience in relation to why you feel inclined to vote a certain way. Yeah. Which everyone is. Yes. And my brother-in-law is just like, so smart. He's the kind of person you don't want to get into an argument with. Yeah. And so they're kind of going back and forth about like hot issue topics. Yeah. And abortion was one of them. And he keeps going back and forth. And then someone brings up homosexuality. And my
you're in the
room.
Like,
and I'm sitting there and I'm like, And
at this point you already knew, like, did you accept, okay,
no, I really like, again, like knew that I had this attraction, but because I was so not wanting to be that. Yeah. I didn't really know. Yeah. And so, we get into it and we're going back and forth and my dad's like, well, God says this. And my brother was like, God didn't say that. And he's like, go back to, no, don't, like, what is that in? He's like, oh, I don't know. I'll have to go back and check. He's like, yeah, because you're basing your opinions off things that you think you know, but that's not really God's word, quote unquote. So he just kind of was like chewing him up, and I was kind of living, and I was
You're just like,
eat him up. Which like in my mind, I was processing like, hey, I'm actually able to get my parents' unbiased opinion on like what their thoughts are
without having to
say it. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is kind of exactly what I'd been praying for.
Right.
And was like, this is like kind of nice. Yeah. So obviously it was not like the conversation you'd want to like hear come out of your parents' mouth in terms of like what they thought about it. Cause it was obviously not approving of homosexuality.
Right.
But I think that's a lot of reason why people don't come out is because they're scared about what their parents are going to think and say. And now I'm getting that, you know, and it was like, okay, well, we finished the convo. There it is. I got my opinion. Obviously, it's not something that I am super like jumping up and down.
Right.
Like, yay.
But you probably expected it.
Yeah. Well, and I grew up watching TV with my dad and having him audibly gasp in disgust watching two men, you know, be in a relationship and it's just cool to be gay, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, well, that's what I thought. That's what I was taught. That's what I'm, you know, looking at and thinking and believing.
So I'm sure it was like shocking even for you to have these feelings towards men.
Yeah.
Be like, whoa, what's happening? Because your brain was so trained opposite that like myself. It was like, what the fuck is going on?
Don't want that to be my reality.
Right.
So yeah, I'll fast forward. So that night, basically, like I'm setting my bed up on like the little couch there, and you know how, I mean, maybe not, I don't know like what your experience is like with God and religion, but like people are like, oh, they hear Holy Spirit talk to me, and like, or like missionaries, like, oh, I felt God calling me to go to Israel or whatever, and I'm like, girl, what? No, never had that experience. And this was the first time I felt quote unquote the Holy Spirit, and I was like, I was making my bed that night, and something was telling me like, do not go to bed. Like, you are not allowed to go to sleep tonight unless you go in and talk to your parents about what that conversation. You had
that feeling that all these people were saying.
I was like, shit, like, I really don't want to do this, like, but I felt really compelled. So I walked in and I'm like, hey guys, and like sat on their bed and was like, can we chat? I'm like, oh, shitting my pants, right?
Oh my god.
And that was actually the first time I said the words, I think I'm gay, out loud. And like my parents and I don't really have that relationship. Like we're Greeks. We shove it under the rug. We deal with it. We're like heads down. Don't talk about it. Figure it out for yourself. And so then I walked in and basically was like, hey, I think I'm the poster child of that conversation. And they were like, what? And I was like, I think I'm gay. And they were like, okay, what? Like, and so it was definitely like, I think a shock to them because I mean, I dated women in high school, like, but I mean, I'm pretty flamboyant. I'm like energetic. Obviously I have gay voice. Like, it's like, we should see some things,
right?
You know?
There should have been some signs.
And like, we've had conversations after the fact, one actually pretty recently where it was like, you asked my sister in high school if I was gay. So like, why did you never entertain that conversation to me? And she basically said like, hey, I thought if I entertained it, it might be true. And then it might like come to fruition because of talking about it. And I'm like, well, here we are, still gay. And you didn't talk about it. So like, how did that work out? Which I think as a parent is a tricky, thing to navigate. Like, you don't know, and you don't want to accuse or feel like you're cornering them, but the conversation was never entertained, I think, because they didn't want it to be my reality. Yeah. And so in a way I do resent them. Or
anything to be questioned in your own mind. So they didn't talk about it.
And that's still like kind of the conversation. It's like, well, I just don't think that's God's best for you. And I'm like, okay, well, if you think God's best for me is to marry a woman and have a life that I do not feel authentic in whatsoever, I'm sorry, I disagree. That will never be my life. I do not see it like that. I will never see it like that. Yeah. And it sucks that you can't see it the way that I see it, because I think when I thought like, hey, look, this is honestly the best way to come out. Like, you're like, oh, God told me. And like, I'm such a good little Christian boy. Like, look at my little halo. Like, and I think my parents really didn't know any personally had any friends that were gay or any men that were gay. Yeah. So I think when I like had that instant, like, okay, I'm gay. This is your son. You guys love me. You know my heart. You know the kind of person I am. I think I thought it was going to be like, boop. And it was not, very much not instant. And like, even still to this day is a work in progress.
It's a work in progress.
And
how long ago was that?
I think 8 years now we're coming up on.
Okay.
Which like, my dad recently like had told me like, you did convince me that it wasn't a choice, because that was one of the topics that night. It was like, yeah, like, I think, if God made every man perfect, why would he choose to make someone gay and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I mean, there's just so many things that like, are tricky and gray and like are hard to explain to people that are just very traditional. And like, again,
and everybody has their opinions and everything, but like you're following what makes you happiest and what you feel in your heart is right for you. And that's all you can do. And you know, there's opinions on everything, religion or not, that like it's not affecting, and it's not affecting them. You know what I mean? Anybody.
I had those thoughts and feelings. Before I knew that's who I was myself. So while I can empathize with them and I get it because like it's so foreign to them. And like that's what they believed. And I don't think they're wrong for believing that. You know what I mean? Like you're entitled to your own opinion. But like it really took me reflecting on who I am to even kind of it took me a long time to come to terms with that. So how am I supposed to expect them to flip a switch and get it when it's not even them that's dealing with these thoughts and emotions and like, you know, hating yourself for so many years. And it's like these things that you don't talk about or like maybe when you come out, you're not really explaining the journey to them. So like you're telling them this information without really giving them the journey and letting them be able to understand how you got there yourself. So it's hard because that's not their journey. So it's hard to even like grasp to understand when you're just listening to it as being somebody else, you know,
I totally like hear where you're coming from. Even just like take it on a more not as extreme, but like even me wanting to go into the dance industry, like my parents were raised to think, or my dad was raised to think like they go to college, they get a job, they settle down, they do this and that's it. You know, there's no other option. And that's where it's like, no, it doesn't have to be like that. And I'm going to do what I want to do because it makes me happier. I feel like this is what I'm led to do. And it's the same thing with, you know, who you're sexually attracted to. It's like, well, I know you guys probably think there's no other way to live, you know, because they were raised in the church or whatever they believe, you know, and in their mind, they don't understand how you feel because they've never felt that.
Yeah. And I mean, 3 of the other 4 of my siblings are following that exact same path. And I think like as a parent, all you want is like for your child to be safe and taken care of and not have to worry. And I think that's the route that led them to feel that. And because I was so black sheep and I'm way over here, they didn't know and still really don't how to like process and navigate it. So they're like, while this isn't really what I saw and thought for you, like I think I'm understanding because I think in the same way that I'm grieving a version of my family that doesn't exist, like which took me a long time to accept and have been through a lot of therapy in order to come to terms with. I think they're grieving a version of me that they didn't see, you know, this is not how my life was supposed to be for them. So I try to be patient and understanding, but in the same breath, I don't think it's my job or responsibility to educate them.
It's not
in that way because I tried for a long time and there's that want and desire.
Tried, you know, it's like, what more can you do, you know, with it? It's like, they'll hopefully come around and understand, but you know, I'm not holding my breath. We'll see. I mean, maybe they will. And it's still new, you know,
again, in time. I mean, like, there's definitely been some things that like have gotten better in time. And I do think time heals a lot of wounds. So like, that's awesome. And I'm just kind of,
and maybe, you know, the more years they see you as who you are, that's who they're going to know. They're going to know the Matt that you are now, not the Matt that, you know, was a child growing up.
And all they say is like, all we want for you is to be happy. And I'm like, well, if this is how I'm telling you that I'm happy and this is what makes me happy, then just be supportive. Yeah. Because I think that's really all I'm asking.
Absolutely. So last little thing, because I know
you're like,
you have somewhere to go. You have somewhere to be. You go to therapy. I always like to touch on this for people that do. How has that helped you in like a nutshell? How, like, because I know there's people that I think everybody could benefit from fit therapy.
100%.
Whether you think you're the most normal, non-problem person in the world, like everybody can benefit from therapy. How has that helped your life?
I think like in talking about like even how I'm just such a black sheep and I don't really have a role model or an example to kind of follow as a guideline or a blueprint for what my life and my career and my, you know, sexuality should look like.
Totally.
I think therapy is so validating in that sense that like talking through some of these feelings and emotions and just kind of having them read back to you, you're like, okay, no, that actually makes sense. And if I was giving my opinion on that scenario, I would tell myself to do the same thing and make those same choices. So it's really validating to get that, that sense of like, hey, you're doing it and that's okay. And like, you are who you are, and there's no problem. Like you don't have to hate yourself. And like, it does really give just a sense of comfort into like that voice in your head that, can be anxiety or depression or whatever. And I think there's so much stigma around therapy that like is gotten better in, recent years.
Definitely.
And I'm so grateful for that. But like, to people like my parents that I think have a lot of trauma and just refuse to go to therapy because of the stigma and like, how it makes them look. But like, I also don't think I'm so fucked up that I need to go to therapy. And I think that's what people think it takes in order to be in therapy. And like, you guys, I'm fine mentally. If you ask me my state, I'm great. Like I feel happy. I love my life. I'm like carpe diem to the fullest. Like I'm really happy right now. But like, do I think it's like life or death things that I'm talking about in therapy all the time? No. And I think people think like you have to be going through a divorce or a death or a breakup. And it's like, no, it could just be the mundane things. Like my schedule was what I talked about in therapy yesterday. And I'm like, I'm really overwhelmed. And I like have these conversations where I feel like I need to be doing more because I'm not earning enough rest. Like I need to do it in order to feel like I can take the rest. And it's like,
I'm the same way.
No, you're normal. You can chill. Like, and it's like, okay, so then when a shift comes up and they're like, hey, do you want to take this shift? I'm like, I've worked my ass off this month. Like, I don't have to do that. Like, it's just, it's conversations. I think it's really just rewiring my brain to have conversations with myself even. Like that
wait,
obviously
do I
reflects.
Need to, like, why do I feel like I need to push myself this far in order to receive a day off or a time
because
off?
If that was you and you were telling me, I'd be like, Liz, chill. Like you do too much. Take a minute.
Exactly.
Like, so it's just refreshing. And I don't think people think about how therapy can help them in maybe the minute ways that don't seem like it's a life or death thing, but it's like, no, it really does. It's just like you get off and I'm just like, oh, that was so great. Like I go about my day and I feel this like almost set like boost of serotonin. And I'm like, okay, like that was so helpful. I can have a conversation and like rework my brain to kind of like get out of these neural pathways that have brought me down a dark hole or bring me stress and anxiety to a point where I can have a conversation internally and solve a problem or like feel better
even if
about
it's
it.
Little, like you said, like balancing your schedule and stuff like that. Now whenever you go and you're stressed out, you're like, wait, you can tune into that therapy session and be like, wait, this is what they said. I'm not crazy.
Take a step back.
I'm allowed to feel this, but like, let's chill, you know, because you have that validation that is outside of your head. Correct. Just the little things that you don't talk about on the day to day. Like George's like, what's wrong? Why are you so stressed? I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like, like little things that I think can make a big difference in just your overall happiness.
100%.
So I really like that perspective. So what are you up to now?
I'm teaching right now. This is like my crazy busy season. So like I said, I think I told you earlier, I'm gone like 7 weekends in a row and I'm just setting choreo and like making money. So I'm not complaining. Again, I do what I love. And then we do like a little one day, I'm on convention. So we do like a little preview. It's like a 1 day convention, which is like a shorter version of what we do in the spring. And then when January hits, we're hitting the ground running with like full comp convention things, January to like end of March. So
nice. We're
staying busy. Again, good problems to have. I'm not complaining.
Yes, but definitely. Well, that's exciting. Any last little bit of advice for the audience, just for maybe people whose life has been a freaking roller coaster, tuning into what, your heart is saying for you to do, like how to follow that and kind of pursue those things. If there's any little last spurts of what you call it?
Encouragement.
Yes.
Yeah. I think like my biggest thing that I live by is like honesty and authenticity. And I'm like, if you have that conversation with yourself and you believe in yourself, like it's never too late. Like I have reinvented myself so many times. And while there's risks and fears and, obviously worries and troubles that come along with that, I think if you trust yourself and you believe in yourself, that's going to be the most validating thing ever. Totally. So just like be authentic to who you are and what makes you happy, because like I've experienced a lot. I've had a lot of trauma, a lot of death in my life. And it does give you that perspective to a point where you're like, hey, life's too short. Like,
totally is.
Like I'm 30, I'm going to be 32. And it's like, I don't feel 32. It's like 32. Yeah. I mean, life expectancy is like what, 78 these days? Yeah. It's like, that's crazy. I'm like almost halfway. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like live your life and do what makes you happy, because at the end of the day, when you're on your deathbed, you're not going to remember X, Y, and Z. You're just going to remember like choosing to do things that make you happy in those moments and those memories you create, and doing those things that you love that are really going to stick with you at the end of the day. Yeah. So I would just encourage people to take a risk. If it's something that you're scared of, that's probably a good sign. Yeah. If you're comfortable, that's when you should start to worry, because the comfortability lets you in this bubble and you stunt your growth and you don't expand. And I think as humans, our job is to grow and to connect and to create and relate to each other, because we're all in this human experience together. And so like, even like just chatting with you, like I just feel like it's so awesome to get to listen to people's stories and like, you know, share your knowledge and your experience and your hardships, to just relate to people and be like, hey, we're human. We all have these things. And
I know people like to pretend like we don't have hardships. I'm like, let's talk about them, because we all have them and we can all help each other get through them.
Right. Exactly.
So, well, thank you, Matt, for coming on. What's your Instagram, TikTok? Where are you at? Where people can follow?
Yeah. Instagram is Matthew Pilalis, Pilalis. My TikTok is Matt Pilalis. Yeah. And that's pretty much it, guys.
Cool. Yeah. Guys, make sure to follow Matt Pilalis.
Yeah. I'm going to change my name now.
I love it. And thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me.
And thank you guys for listening. I'll catch you guys next week.
Later, y'all.
Bye.